motion to approve the agenda?
So moved.
Any changes?
Yes, staff is going to pull 10D.
Okay. The consent items as is? Okay, we're good?
No, actually, I wanted to pull sorry, I was not prepared. Sorry, give me 1 second. 8J.
So question, so for staff to pull it, we're taking it off the agenda.
No, to discuss it.
Pardon me?
To pull it just to discuss it, right?
Oh, yes, exactly, sorry, never mind.
Okay.
I lost my mind
It's
then.
like, wait, what?
I lost my mind, sorry.
We got it back. Any other changes? If not, may I have a motion to approve the agenda as amended?
No, we didn't make, I did, but we didn't make the changes yet. I move that we approve the agenda as amended.
Okay, have a second?
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, 2, we're going to convene a closed session to consideration of Ed Code 35146, a student matter or confidential student matters, conference with legal counsel, anticipated litigation, significant exposure to litigation pursuant to paragraph 2, subdivision of section 54956.9, one case, and then C, public employee discipline, dismissal, government release, government code 54957.1. We will adjourn to closed session. reconvene to open session from closed session. The board met in closed session. The board gave direction to staff, but no other action was taken. So we will go on then to 3B, one of our favorite things, the flag salute. And so tonight we have Mia Jane, right? Welcome. Come forward and give us a salute.
Please stand. Put your right hand over your heart. Ready, begin. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. You may be seated.
Thank you. So I have a pin for you. And it says here you're
We're gonna roll the channel on it.
Oliver Seinfeld.
Yeah.
Yep. And also you are the student council president.
Yep.
Yeah. What's your favorite zone?
Half.
We need that. So I have this pin.
Mm-hmm.
Sorry about the scotch tape. I'll let you dissect that. Would you bring any guests tonight? You want to introduce them?
Well, that's my mom.
Okay.
Yeah.
Welcome. Thank you. All right. Appreciate it. Okay, so we'll go to 4A. And I have a script for 4A to read. So I open the public hearing for the governing board. Public hearing to receive public testimony concerning proposed trustee voting area plans associated with the district's transition to a by-trustee area election system. So as we're convening to that, I will read this to make sure we have everything. I said that. Under the California Elections Code 10010, the board must hold at least 2 public hearings prior to holding a public hearing to adopt a final trustees voting area. So tonight we will have presentations from our demographer and from our attorney. So members of the public may submit comments on the established voting area boundaries for the new trustee voting areas that will be established as part of the district's transition from an at-large election to a by-trustee area election. Speakers will be given 3 minutes to make comments on this matter and this matter only, and we have received no cards. So at this time, we will turn it over to our attorney and to the demographer. So welcome.
Good evening. Good evening, members of the public, school board, superintendent. My name is Peter Fagan with Fagan, Friedman, and Fullfrost, and we'll do a quick run-through regarding information about the California Voting Rights Act, its history, and the requirements that you are going through right now to meet it. Along with me is Andrew Chittafong from Cooperative Strategies, and Andrew is the demographer, and he will be speaking to you partway through the presentation. Does this work?
On the side, turn it on.
On the side? There we go, okay. There we go. The California Voting Rights Act has been around for 17 years now. And in that time, at the time it was passed, almost all public agencies elected their board members or city council members through at-large elections. Over the last 17 years, we're getting close to 50% that now have elections through by-trustee area elections, which is what you are considering at this point. The California Voting Rights Act prohibits the at-large elections if it can be proven, and it's a very low bar to prove, that the at-large elections somehow impairs a protected class, a member of a protected class, from influencing the election to elect a candidate of their choice. It is not the Federal Voting Rights Act. There's significant differences between the California Voting Rights Act and the Federal Voting Rights Act. one of the main differences is that there is no intent requirement to be proven for a violation of the California Voting Rights Act. So there's no intent required by this body to discriminate against a protected class to inhibit them from being able to elect the candidate of their choice. That is just presumed. And the idea behind the California Voting Rights Act was to move eventually public agencies toward by trustee area elections. Another thing that is different is that under the California Voting Rights Act, the plaintiff is able to recover attorney's fees and expert witness fees and costs if they win a lawsuit based on this act, where the public agency, if you were to defend the lawsuit and win, you're not entitled to the same recovery. So again, that's another way that the legislature chose to enact this law and in essence stack it against public agencies who have at-large elections. The legislature, in its wisdom, did provide one potential way to protect a district from potential liability, and that's what we call a safe harbor. The statute provides a safe harbor, which the only way to get there, into that harbor, is to adopt a resolution to convert to by-trustee area elections, and then draw those maps, approve a map, and eventually hold an election under that system. Now, once that change is made, it's a significant change in the way board members are elected, because you're no longer elected by all the voters in a district. You're elected by only the voters in a trustee area. So 1/5 of the entire school district boundaries would be, and population would be electing each individual board member. That would then make up the total of 5 board members. The requirements for this process, I think you mentioned it, Mr. Board President, in the preamble to this. There's a requirement for at least 2 public hearings, and this is the second public hearing prior to drawing maps. The reason for the public hearings is so that the public can be brought up to speed on what the board is considering, and then there will be 3 public hearings that are required after maps are drawn, so that the members of the public can then weigh in on the maps that are drawn and provide their feedback and suggestions and preferences. So this is the demographer's chance to weigh in and walk you through the demographics, and then I'll be back.
So on the screen, we have the district's demographics. We do have to use the 2010 population provided by the census, because those were the last official recorded numbers by the government. On the left, we have a geographic profile of the district with the cities that encompasses the district. So we have City of Cotati and City of Roanoke Park, as well as the unincorporated county of Sonoma. So we have to include everybody within the district's boundaries for part of this process. And on the right, we have the breakdown of the demographics for everybody in the district. And on the left column, we have the total population, and this is the number that we're using to divide up each area into equal parts. So that number comes out to be 52,746, and we are dividing that number by 5, which will equal roughly about 10,500 individuals within each area. And we are able to use a 10% variance, which we will talk about more later in the presentation. So between the smallest area and the largest area, each area is going to contain about plus or minus 1,000 people from the 10,500 individuals. And the population breakdown, the largest protected class here is the Hispanic Latino community, which is about 20.8%. And the next largest population, the white population, being 67.89%, African American at 1.71%. The next largest is the Asian population at 4.82%. And we also have the demographics of those who are 18 years and older, and that number comes out to be about a little over 42,000 with their demographic breakdown as well. And we're really going to be focusing more on the citizens voting age population, also known as CVAP, or your eligible voters for the district. And we are using a more updated data set for this part of the data. We are using it from the American Community Survey, and it is a branch from the census as well. This one includes more recent data. It's a rolling average from 2013 to 2017. So it is a 5-year rolling average to kind of get a more updated data when we're figuring out how to divide the areas. And on the left, we have the citizens voting age population heat map or density map. So lighter colors representing less dense areas and the darker red areas representing more dense. So what we do is try to see where they're all concentrated within your district and see if we can all put them in their own area when we start breaking up these areas into their individual 5 areas.
Andrew,
Yes.
is that map on the district website for the community to see?
It should be in the presentation. I don't think there's an individual PDF by itself, but if
Can it-
that's,
Mike, can it be put on the district website so the community can see what map we're using?
Sure, we can put that up.
Okay, thanks.
and then we also have the demographic breakdown for your eligible voters. And again, the Hispanic Latino being the largest of the protected class at 16.17%, the white population at 74.48%, and the next largest protected class is the Asian population at 4.21%. And what we really try to do is increase the percentages here that you see on the table when we start dividing up the areas. So when we talk about increased influence or increased voting power, we're talking about the percentages being higher than the district-wide average. And here is just a general aerial view of your district. Take a step back and see how you might want these areas to be divided and drawn. We do have the highways, freeways, and the major roads labeled, just as a general a view, just to get an idea of how you might want these areas to be drawn. And some examples would be, I would like to keep neighborhood X and neighborhood Y in the same trustee area, or more specifically, I think the 101 and Rohnert Park Expressway and the transit tracks should all be in the same area because geographically it makes the most sense, or it follows a natural boundary. And again, this is just an example of some ideas that we are hoping to hear tonight, just so it can help us figure out some ideas. So when we go to the drawing board, we have at least a starting point. If not, we'll figure out the division lines ourselves.
I have a question. So I know some districts have tried to align the districts up with certain schools. Have you seen that?
Yes, so we do follow some school boundaries if that's what the board or the community wants to see. We have also done it where there's multiple areas covering multiple boundaries, so there's more representation within each school boundary. But it kind of just depends on which way you want to have the representation or the lines drawn, but we can definitely follow those boundaries if you want to see that.
One of the other things I've seen as well is where, looking at a map, you may have some areas that are more country property, so the properties are more spread out, so that when you look at the division of the sections, you've got large areas and you've got really condensed areas, and it's because of the fact that you have a lot more populated, smaller locations.
Right, and just depending on how the population's spread out within your district, we might have to grab portions of a more dense, concentrated area of where people are living, as well as the more country area, just so that population is in balance. But we try to do the best that we can to keep at least the communities that make the most sense to be together.
Do we have the school boundary map still available on the website since we stopped doing it that way? If you lived in this district, you could go to this school, and now we kind of don't
I
do that.
actually don't know. I'll have to look.
Because I'd like to see them, because I don't think they're on there anymore, since we changed how kids go to what school. Thank you.
Just one more question for the demographer. It's interesting you came up with your percentages of the breakdown of the populations of the, different races or whatever. So they don't match what goes to our school. That's drastically different than that. So do you take that into consideration at all?
No, because we are taking the whole population. Are you talking about the total population or those who are the citizens voting age population?
Well, let's go back to, you were showing 17% is Hispanic,
But this is going by the 2000, or the
but
2010.
the demographics, but 40 per, 40,
45, 46.
45,
something.
somewhere in there is our student population. So if those two don't, I mean, you show 72% white, but we're not made up of 72%. So is that, I guess my question is, you're taking the population of the community where.
From 2010.
From 2010, but even if you change it from 2012, I still think those numbers aren't going to change that much. I mean, it might be surprised, they might.
One thing I noticed too is that if you look at they're concentrating on the voting population. And the other thing is the minors, there's about 10,000 people under 18, and that's like half of our district. So, you know, the numbers are totally different, you know. There could be like
I'll
1,000 or
address the
3 kids
question.
that go to
Okay.
a different.
The student population and the makeup of the student population has nothing to do with this process.
Okay.
You're looking at this process, the demographer will look at the total population, which will obviously include students, but the total population, and then the other category is the citizen voting age population that he will look at. But the makeup of your student body is not something that's taken into consideration under the California Voting Rights Act. It's the makeup of the total population in your district that has to be looked at. Okay? There was another question about drawing trustee area boundaries along school attendance boundary areas. And as Andrew said, we've seen it done a lot of different ways. I'll tell you, there's some considerations to be made, is that I don't know if you're in declining population or enrollment or increasing enrollment, but the bottom line is attendance boundaries will change as your enrollment changes, and the boundaries that you draw for the trustee area maps will be in place for 10 years. Now, not this first one, but the next one will be in place for 10 years. And so as your attendance boundaries change, you won't be changing the boundaries of the trustee areas. So that's something to keep in mind if, because districts that say, well, we want them to match up with our attendance boundaries, and then 5 years from now, you're closing a school and redrawing boundaries, it no longer works. You can look at that, though, because one of the factors that you look at are communities of interest. And I've heard it said many times that our elementary school attendance boundaries, or the families that attend a certain elementary school, make up a community of interest. And so that is something that you may want to consider. The other side of that coin is that I hear a lot of districts or boards will say, this process may balkanize our district, and so a board member will be only beholding to the people that elected them and will no longer look out for the overall well-being of the district. And we'll look at only these 2 or 3 schools that are in their area. And so in order to combat that, many districts or many boards have drawn the boundaries across as many attendance areas as possible, so that parents that have their children attending a particular school may have 2 or 3 board members that represent people that go to that school, that particular school, to spread out the possible representatives that parents could go to. So while they may not live in that area, they do also represent that as people
Right.
that attend that
As a
school.
board member, we're a K-12 district, and a board member represents K-12
Right.
in the interest of all of them, not just maybe the school that my son or daughter went to 100 years ago, but,
Right.
you know,
And that,
so,
I will get to that,
Right.
that point in this presentation here toward the end.
okay.
Okay, as Andrew said, you'll be using the 2010 census data. Obviously, the citizen voting age population was based on more recent data. Also comes from the Census Department, though. As nearly equal in population as practicable is a key phrase, and that, remember, that's the total population. It's infants to the oldest resident in your city or your district, and it doesn't matter if they're citizens, it doesn't matter if they vote, if they have children that attend the school. It's total population when you're dividing this up. More criteria to consider. You can't violate the U.S. Constitution, obviously. Again, that second bullet point, we're hammering that in because that's something that they look at all the time. The local communities of interest that I already mentioned. Geographical compactness is something to look at as well. The county committee or courts, if they were ever brought into it, would look suspiciously on wildly gerrymandered districts. The other thing is, I guess it's not on this chart, but another thing is they have to be contiguous. You can't have part of Area 2 over here and then another part of Area 2 that's over here, and they don't connect with each other. They have to be contiguous. Oh, I guess it is there, right in the middle. Okay, final thoughts. And this is to your point, and the point that I was making earlier, is that this does not change your district boundaries. It doesn't change your attendance boundaries. A lot of times, members of the public get all up in arms because they think you're changing the attendance boundaries, which I know is a controversial topic. This has nothing to do with that. And nor does it change how it's governed. And as you mentioned, board members will have take the same oath, have the same fiduciary duty to the entire district. They'll have the same legal duty of loyalty to the entire district. So even though board members in the future will be elected by only 1/5 of the entire district's population, their legal duties remain, and their duty of loyalty remains to the entire district. Here's where we are in the process. We're completing the second public hearing, pre-map. As you can see, the next step is for Andrew and his team to draft some maps for the board to consider, and then you're legally required to have 3 more public hearings where members of the public can weigh in on the actual maps that have been drawn. And now, I guess there's no one to speak, but this is where you hear from the public.
We have no comments, so move on.
You may have comments for the next one when there's actual maps to
Right,
consider.
yeah. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. Okay, we will close the public hearing. And so then we will open the public hearing for 4B. And as we're opening the public hearing on the submission of a general waiver request to be approved by the State Board of Education in accordance with Education Code 33050-33053. Under Education Code 33050, the board must hold a public hearing to consider the submission of a waiver request to the State Board of Education to waive all or portions of the Education Code. As part of the public hearing, members of the public may submit comments on a proposal to submit a waiver request to the Board of Education pertaining to the requirements in the Education Code that a change in the district election system from an at-large election system to a by-trustee area election be presented to the electoral of the district. Districts will be given 3 minutes to make comments on this matter. We do not have any cards, so that's not necessary. So after we've received that, do I have any questions of the board or not before I close? If not, and just kind of a summary, the reason we are doing this obviously is, at least not obviously, but it might be obvious that we don't want to put this out to a public election due to the cost. If it went out to the entire district, that could be $60,000, $70,000, and the district doesn't want to include that from there. So I will.
Oh, sorry. Also, the other part is that if it gets voted down, then we open ourselves up for lawsuits.
Right, correct.
And they have historically gone into the millions.
Yeah, so we don't want those
And
costs.
no one's won.
Yeah, so, thanks, Joe. Okay, we will close the public hearing. And now the board will do 4C, take the consideration of the adopting resolution 1920-13, authorizing the submission of a general waiver request to be approved by the State Board of Education concerning the district's transition to a by-trustee election system following the opening and closing of the public hearing. So, do I have any questions? If not, may I have a motion to approve resolution 1920-13?
I'll make a motion to approve Resolution 1920-13.
Have a second?
All second.
Roll call?
Trustee Brown?
Yes?
Yes.
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 Thank you. Here we'll go to 5A, discuss naming the theater at Rancho Cotati High School. Thank you. Have a safe trip back. Louis Gansler is going to give us a half-an-hour presentation.
If you want.
No.
Good evening. I'm Louis Gansler, principal of Rancho Cotati High School. I'm here to recommend that you consider naming our theater in the TAG building after a retired teacher. I was approached in October by 2 retired teachers who recommended that we name the theater after this teacher. They submitted several letters from former students. I convened a committee to take a look at the evidence. My natural inclination is to be skeptical. And so I was left with 3 things. First, this is a teacher who was beloved and inspired many, many people to go on to very successful professional careers. 2, he created a drama program and urged the community to pass a bond to build a theater, which, as we all know, happened eventually. And 3rd, he founded the Gay Straight Alliance at our school, which, and he did so in the 80s, which was an act of bravery because people were being fired for being openly gay and there was no protection. And so the name of this teacher is Jim Pitt, and sadly he passed away this month. So I have letters of support from former students, which I have copies for each of you, which I'll give you. And I'm here to just recommend that you consider naming the theater after him and hearing from the public on this issue and hearing about this very special teacher. And that is it.
Okay, so tonight, this is not an action item.
Not at all. I'm suggesting that you
Right.
consider it.
Right. So when we went through and named the gymnasium, similar process like that, would your committee then come forth, or are there questions from the board, first of all, tonight?
I'm wondering if there were any other names that were brought forth besides this one?
Nope.
Because I had heard some people talking about Lanny Lowry being brought forth as a name.
That name has not been brought forth to me. One of the retired teachers who approached me to name the theater after Mr. Pitt is Mr. Lowry. So
Well, and he
that-
would never mention himself. He's not like that. Okay, thank you.
Louis, do you have a recommendation for the board?
I would not be in front of you recommending that you even consider this if I didn't support this action.
I think for myself, it should have come to the board first, so that we could have opened it up more to the community, because this is the first I'm even hearing about it.
So just to be clear, I'm suggesting that you open it up to the community.
Okay. Okay, great.
Yeah, it's
Thank
not
you.
an action item. yet.
Not at all.
No, but
But-
normally the whole process is open, and then they go and
Right,
go
Yeah.
through the process, so.
yeah, it's a multi-stage process.
Yeah.
But I just want to say that I think this is fantastic, because, I mean, I'm sorry that he passed away, and I don't want to downplay his contribution in any way, but and I know the word symbol has a bad rap, but the symbolism of honoring somebody who was so courageous in coming forward and representing the gay and lesbian communities to do this was incredible, and I think that it would send a strong message to our district and community that we are inclusive, we are diverse, that we are a welcoming community to all students, from all orientations, including sexual and gender orientation. And so I think it's fantastic, and I strongly urge us to move forward with the next steps in this process.
So just as a point of clarification for the board, you have a policy, Board Policy 7310, which outlines the process for naming a facility. And so it really states the board encourages community participation in the process of selecting names. A citizen advisory committee may be appointed to review name suggestions and submit recommendations for the board's consideration. Before adopting any proposed name, the board shall hold a public hearing, at which time members of the public will be given an opportunity to provide input. And when naming or renaming a district school, building, or facility, the board may specify the duration for which the name shall be in effect.
Yeah, I think we need to back up a little bit and follow that process. Because it's kind of like you've come to us with a solution at the end with a name type of thing. And so, you know, like Jennifer said, I think we need to back up and so
Just do the whole process. But Jim Pitt was a wonderful man. I had him as a teacher as well.
Right.
So I think it's just a matter of following the process so that we're always doing the same process.
Absolutely. I mean, you're free to obviously follow whatever process you want. I am following the same process that I followed for the gym, which is to get a name, submit it to you, and then you opened it up.
So how
For a
do
vote.
we assign a citizens committee or ask for that to take place? That's the first step, I think, that makes sense. How do we do that?
Usually, the principal will put together.
So I would have to go back and look and see what you've done before, since I haven't been here. But I would think that you would look to identify people at that school specifically, but then I think you would want to get some at-large representation.
Yeah.
Yeah, but what there can be is a sense of the board that this should be on the agenda for, at the next regular board meeting.
Well, they
I think
could be
that's
that too, but I mean,
premature.
you have to go out and pick your committee.
Yeah.
Committees have to meet, they have to seek names, not, you know, it looks like a couple individuals came forward with this name. I mean, I have to be honest, someone came to me and said, oh, you know, we should, you know, this person should be named at the theater, but I said, well, there's a process, and you have to follow that process. So, I can't take one or two people, we have to follow the process, get a committee, you know, are there other names? And then the last time that committee came, and a number of them spoke as to why.
So, we're basically saying to form the committee that you've already formed, because you've already formed a committee. But then the only difference is trying to make it more public. So basically have the same committee that you've had and try to do more, I guess, public outreach to get the word out that we're looking for suggestions.
I'm wondering if we also need to look at, when we're looking at a committee, how many people should be on the committee and what their background should be. How many retired teachers, how many past students, how many current students? I mean, there should be something that's in place.
We'll
that
save this for the
outlines
next superintendent, I'm just kidding.
You're so
Louis, do you
funny.
currently have a citizens committee that?
Yes.
And what's that committee
I've-
look like?
Again, I followed the exact same process for this that I did with the naming of the gymnasium. So
So your citizens committee is made up of,
retired people, people from the community, myself, a mix of credentialed and classified staff.
What's the quantity of each? Like, is there like 2 retired, 2 students, 2?
There were no students. There were about 5 people, each person representing a different area.
But Lev, can't we just direct the superintendent to work with Louis to establish
No,
the
he said he's
process?
gonna have to retire.
No, I mean, I think the good news is the conversation's already begun.
Right.
And so I think that we just need to take what's already been done, perhaps add a little more input, and then make it public that a recommendation is going to come forward, and the board's going to have a public hearing on a particular name recommendation.
Right.
And see if there's any other names that want to be recommended.
Awesome, thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
All right, great, thank you.
This is-
So of public comment, we have none. Okay, so the highlight of the evening, communications, student board member reports. I understand you have outstanding reports for us tonight. Good. Juliette, gonna go first?
Happy New Year. The results from our annual canned food drive are in. We ended up surpassing our goal of 2,000 cans, collecting a total of 2,759 canned goods. All of these items, which composed a whopping total of 2,298 pounds of food, were donated to the Redwood Empire Food Bank, where they will provide 1,873 meals. We are so extremely grateful to everyone who donated and glad to have another opportunity to give back to our community. Last week, on both Thursday and Friday, a group of students throughout all grade levels was able to participate in the Safe School Ambassador training program, which is something new for Tech High. Safe School Ambassadors addresses community, anti-bullying, and how students can support their peers by being proactive in intervening in bullying. We are so excited to be able to have this at our school, and we cannot wait to see the positive effect that it has on our campus.
Sorry.
As for future events, both of our basketball teams will be having their first home league games of the season, and the girls' game will begin at 5, and the boys' game will begin at 6:30. We would love for everyone to come and show their support for our Titan athletes. The Biter Reality event will be occurring next Tuesday, the 28th of January. Redwood Credit Union, with the help of school staff and parent volunteers, is offering a day where seniors and robotics students learn about money, budgets, careers, and so forth. Past students that have participated in this program believe it is quite helpful and informative and highly recommend it. In addition, ASB is currently planning a blood drive with the Vitalant organization, formerly known as the Blood Centers of the Pacific, that will be held on both February 21st and April 24th. There will be more details to come, but we hope to have our community come out, donate blood, and help us surpass our goal of 26 appointments by February 14th, which is 1 week before the event. On February 14th, ASB will be hosting our third rally of the year, which will be Superhero Valentine's Day themed, and will showcase our band, choir, and musical theater programs. It is bound to be a great amount of fun, so please come check it out. Also in February, ASB is hosting a winter dance. We are still deciding on the theme, but the dance will be held on the 22nd at the DoubleTree. Thank you.
Students are excitedly arriving back to school after our relaxing winter break. The second semester is already into full swing, and freshmen, sophomores, and juniors have begun to fill out their course registrations for next year. To kick off our spring semester, ASB held our Spirit Point lunch to celebrate the class that collected the most Spirit Points in the fall semester. The seniors took the lead and enjoyed free pizza and cookies passed out during lunch on the 10th. Our ASB held our first ever Pasta Feed and Silent Auction on the 17th to help fundraise for our leadership training at Disneyland, which will occur in April. Our guests enjoyed pasta provided by Sonoma County's very own Pasta King and were able to bid at our silent auction, which included items like Disneyland tickets as well as treats baked by our own ASB students. Our Cougar Boosters will be holding their annual crab feed on the 25th. All money raised in this feed and silent auction goes back to support our boosters and athletic programs. The College and Career Center has been working very hard this year with opportunities for Rancho students. Our Cougars were able to attend Mi Futuro, a health and medical program that displayed the different careers in the field for our interested students. We also were lucky to have the Universal Tech Institute visit our campus and educate students on careers in STEM and in the mechanical field. Some important changes are coming to Rancho. Our soccer team for the first time has a program translated into Spanish available to Spanish speakers. The Latino Alliance created this program and also provided new jerseys for our athletes. Along with that, our Public Relations Commissioner has begun translating ASB's social media into Spanish. We like to ensure that our students and their families have access to information important to them, so we are excited for this change. Coming up, Rancho's annual Unity Week is happening next month. Unity Week is a week where we showcase the different cultures at our school and help advocate for unity while recognizing the things that make us different. We have many performances and presentations throughout the week, and all to be topped off with our Unity Week assembly to close off the week. Rancho students and staff love to take part in the multiple activities throughout the week, and we are excited to see how our ASB does this year. Creating a new tradition, ASB will be putting on our first Turnabout dance in many years. Turnabout is traditionally a girls ask the guys dance, but no dates are required. Students are very excited to attend the dance, and we can't wait to see how successful this new event will be. Thank you.
Thank you. So 7B, Roanoke Park Cotati Education Report. Welcome.
Good evening. I'm going to give a report on several schools. Evergreen, they're performing a Peter Pan play, alliteration, at the Rancho Cotati Tag Building. They're taking the whole school field trip to Rancho on January 30th to see the play and take a tour of Rancho from the Link Crew. This is a great way to showcase the talented students, as well as provide an opportunity to see all that Rancho has to offer. They're having 2 weekend performances for parents as well, and grateful for the PTA for sponsoring the opportunity for the students. Monte Vista had their annual Peacemaker Assembly on January 21st to honor Martin Luther King. Each student nominates a student that they feel goes above and beyond following school and classroom rules to promote peace and harmony amongst their peers. These students have been recognized by their peers as someone who knows how to compromise, solve problems without creating conflict, use their life skills, and help others remember to do the same. Richard Crane is gearing up for their open house on Thursday. The PTA recently held a movie night. 2 former students that are currently in the student leadership at Lawrence Jones came and volunteered and served popcorn. They also are appreciative of Rancho Cotati peer helpers that are volunteering to read with students. The connections that our schools have with one another is one of the many reasons why our district is awesome and distinctive. Rancho Cotati, one of the Spanish teachers, has been doing a pen pal project and working with 2 schools in Mexico, one in Mazatlan and the other one in Guadalajara. And it's been a really cool experience for the kids as they've communicated back and forth. The teacher reports that their communication skills, especially in writing, have really increased. And they're developing some good friendships all around. In fact, one of the schools has now adopted Rancho as their sister school and even sent gifts to the teachers. So thank you very much.
Dave, I have a question for you, please.
Yes.
I appreciate your presentations, but I'm a little confused because I don't ever remember you speaking about anything other than events and activities at schools. I never have heard you talk about what's going on with the teachers and the union, and that's the title of this presentation. And in the past, other union presidents have spoken directly to what's going on with the teachers and the union. And I was just wondering if you have any thoughts on your role in making this presentation and the content of your presentation.
Well, specifically with the union, we've done a bargaining survey. In fact, we met this afternoon, and we'll be meeting again next week and start our bargaining process. Is that what you were asking?
Yeah, I think I personally, as one trustee, would appreciate hearing more about what's going on with the teachers and the union, because we get a lot of emails about events at schools, and I just feel like it's redundant to hear a verbal presentation of what's going on at schools.
Okay.
I'd rather hear what's going on with our teachers. Like, for instance, to give you an example, Julie said the other day that there was a survey, and it showed that there was, I think, 78% of the teachers in our district feel satisfied with the direction of the district. And I was wondering, have you ever heard of that survey? Do you know what she was referring to?
Yeah, there's regular surveys every year, and we do talk about the results.
And what was the percentage?
I don't remember the exact percentage off the top of my head.
Do you know when that survey was done?
I don't remember when it was last done.
Because I remember
Yes.
one time Jen Bodlovich reported on the survey, and she gave us a lot of details of the survey,
Mhm.
how many responded, and a breakdown of that. So I would appreciate more information on teachers and the union in the future.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions?
Excuse me, I just want to make a comment. I think this item is on the agenda for the RIPSIA president to determine how he wants to use the time. And I would be concerned that we would be interfering with a collective bargaining group if we provide direction on what he or she should be saying or not. I think it's good feedback for David, but I just want to throw that out there.
Yeah, just to push back, I'm not talking about determining the nature of the content. I'm just talking about that the union would report on what's going on with the union, because in the past, other presidents have done that, and it's helped the board understand what's going on with the teachers so that we can function more properly as a board. I'm not talking about getting into negotiations or anything like that.
Just a clarification, David gets to determine the content, and we can't ask him to format that content, which
No, I
I
wasn't-
believe you just did.
No, I was suggesting that it would be more helpful. I
Well,
wasn't,
I don't think we can
Yeah.
even suggest, under the fact that if they have the right to pick their subject and their content, and if we, so I have to agree with the superintendent, we can't ask David to format to hear more issues about whether negotiations or feedback for surveys or whatever.
I hear what you're saying, but I kind of like what Tim, I think I kind of agree, because I'm not saying to whatever, but he's just saying like he's just saying personally he wants to hear more about what's going on with the teachers union.
Then he can talk to the superintendent. That's who he goes to. That would
I have
be,
to agree with Tim as well. We used to get reports from Jen Bodlovich when she would speak, and she would talk about what the union was doing, how they were progressing, how the teachers were feeling. I don't want to tell you what to talk
I
about.
think you're confusing what your role is. That's the problem.
Well,
That's why you need to listen to what the
We are just
superintendent
making
said.
a suggestion to get more information about how RIPSI is doing. I'm not confused about my
I think
role.
it's showing, I think Tim's just showing concern, like he really cares about what's going on with the teachers, and this is another way to get
And
information.
for
If
the
the president
new-
wants
It's much
to.
deeper than that.
And for the new school board members, we just have to tread lightly when it comes to negotiations and, and getting into any labor law violations. So we can ask for things, but if it's not within the realm of what they have to do, then we're out of bounds.
And also just timing-wise too, in terms of the survey, that is part of the LCAP, and I'll talk about that coming up real quickly. And David hasn't experienced that yet. He was not president last year when the survey came up. So he's gonna have a good fun time working with me here pretty quickly as we start doing that survey again. So you will definitely hear information. I'll be able to help, provide some information to the union when the results come out as well. So that
And
will
I-
be forthcoming.
I just want to be clear that I'm not asking for a violation of any kind of union labor negotiations. I'm just curious about, particularly when Tim mentioned the satisfaction, I'd love to know how many teachers took the survey when we say 78% were satisfied. What was the makeup of that? So that's that kind
That's
of
me.
information.
So that's the LCAP report. So he doesn't, he will get the results afterwards, after I kind of format all that. So that's, Jen Bodlovich and I sat down, and we kind of go through all of that information as well. So you guys, that is coming. I promise, I'll update you guys in a few seconds here. It's forthcoming here.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, great. So, no correspondence, right? So we'll go to the consent agenda. We pulled 8J. So I guess we can first vote on, does Tim have a?
No, not on this one.
No, not on this one. Okay, so Tim, you don't have to recuse yourself from anything. So we're going to first vote on the consent agenda 8A through I, K, L, and M. So any question, nobody pulled it. So can I have a motion to accept consent agenda A through I and K, L, and M?
So moved.
Can I have a second?
I'll second.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. And then, Carissa, you pulled 8J, approval of the community voice contract. So you had some questions on that, and then we have discussion.
I had hoped that we would look at this as part of a larger marketing and advertising. I'm kind of to the point where we're just like throwing money at this and seeing if it'll stick, as opposed to talking in a more broad terms. Jennifer and I and Robert, in part of our little goal-setting thing, we briefly touched on it. I have no problem with advertising, but I want it to be in a larger picture of what are we going to do that might bring students in, that might keep the students that we have. And that's why I pulled it. I think that we need to look at this in a larger picture, as opposed to just, let's do this, let's do that, let's see if this works. I'd like to know, if we do this, what are we going to get out of it? Do we have any way to measure our advertising and marketing plan? Is it working? So those
I
are
don't have
just,
any clue. So we brought this forward, really at the urging of, my understanding is the publisher of the Community Voice, because our contract had expired for the year, and the rate that we were going to be charged was significantly different if we didn't have the contract. And so we brought this forward similar to what I guess happened last year. And so I don't have strong feelings one way or another about this particular item. And I think we can look at looking at a broader picture, but we're kind of building the plane as it's flying. So
That's one of the things I'd like us to have a meeting about,
Yep.
is let's not build the plane while we're flying. Let's sit down and create a plan and hear about what works, what doesn't work. Look at the different demographics as well as, you know, what your young parents, where are they getting their information? You know, let's look at the ages of our parents and figure out, you know, where our dollars are best spent, as well as promoting within our district and meaning internally and externally. If we could have a marketing meeting, that would be great.
I agree.
And
Yeah.
we've added, you know, we'll vote on later on the calendar for additional days. So we can calendar one of those days for that if we wish to.
I agree completely with what Chris has said, that we need to fit it into a broader marketing strategy, and we need evaluation, that we've been asking for evaluations of these different things for, what, a year or 2 years, and so far we haven't got anything. But the other thing is that I know that the Community Voice has done incredible stories throughout the year on our districts, and not just in sports, but with teachers and programs and, you know, all sorts of stuff. And I feel like our local paper is an asset to the pride of our district and letting people know what's going on. And I know that, you know, maybe a particular board member might have a personal vendetta against the Community Voice, but on the other hand, that they are our local paper, and it's well-read and it's distributed widely, and this is going to be effective in getting out word in our community about what is going on in our district and building pride, and I think it's an excellent opportunity that we should move forward with, even while we're looking at the long range of creating a broader marketing strategy, but you don't want to stop what you're doing, and you know, all we're talking about is maybe 1.5 students will make it all worthwhile, and so I think we'd be shooting ourselves in the foot if we didn't do that. But at the same time, Chris is right, we have to have a broader strategy and a process for evaluation.
I understand that the board would like data and results as to what our marketing yields. We don't have the professional expertise in the district to do that. And so that will require us to get somebody to come in that is able to measure what do you get from an ad, what do you get from those kinds of things, because we just don't have that talent here.
Well, and I understand. So what I would like to see is exactly what Jennifer said. Let's set aside one of our meetings to talk about it. What's the budget? What can we come up with, thinking outside the box? We seem to do really well as a board with the white paper, breaking into groups and just throwing up everything that comes to mind, and then we come together and pick certain things. This is almost $11,000 just on this one thing. I get it's a community newspaper. I don't think us advertising the community newspaper should change how well the articles are written and how fair they are being written currently. So I'm not opposed to doing it. I'm opposed to doing it right now. as opposed to let's look at the larger picture of what we're going to do, banners, advertising, mailers, whatever we decide to do on a larger scale.
Got it. Any other questions? So this is an agenda item, so we have several options here. We can vote and have a second to go forward. We can do nothing, and then the contract doesn't happen.
I move that we take a vote on the contract.
What do you mean, to make a motion to approve
Yeah.
this? Okay. Do I have a second? Okay, I have no second, so it looks like this item will be not done until later on when we build the entire plane. Okay, thank you. So we'll go on to 9A, the Local Control Accountability Plan. Never heard of that before.
All right, good fun, exactly. And don't forget differentiated assistance also.
Okay.
So January kicks off the basic LCAP planning. We've had one committee meeting so far, but now we really get into the weeds and start looking at all of our data, conducting our needs assessments. You've heard surveys tonight. We will be doing a teacher survey. We're doing student surveys and student focus groups. We are submitting questions to the committee for our parent survey. And I want to thank the parent who helped us devise a new survey last year that surveys not only everybody across the district, but breaks it into elementary, middle, and high school. We got double the responses when we did that, so thank you very much for that suggestion. Again, we are working very closely with the County Office of Education. Last Tuesday, I had an all-day training. We are on our third LCAP template now in 6 years. So really excited to dive into our new template and make sure we get that one squared away. There is a great deal of discussion at the state for the LCAP right now in terms of fiscal responsibility. The LCAP addresses needs for all students, but specifically focuses on unduplicated pupils, which are students who are English language learners, at risk, free and reduced, foster youth, and homeless students. So kind of within this big category, we're really having to make sure that what we say we're spending on these students is accounted for. Robert does a phenomenal job with me, and I am very hopeful for this next LCAP that we develop here. We will be meeting with teachers and kind of trying to look at our data to really pinpoint what our highest needs are. So as we're working on board goals, definitely heard the 4 buckets that we are looking at, and we'll craft goals that kind of tailor perfectly into the board goals that are being created right now. So really excited about that, and just diving into the whole process. My next committee meeting is next Monday, January 27th at 3:45 in L1. If any parents want to come too, please come, the more the merrier.
Can I ask you a quick question?
Sure.
Who's on the committee?
It's Jen and Joe, right? Right. Yes, Jen
But I
and
mean,
Joe.
besides the 2 board members, what's
It
the
can be
makeup?
anybody.
Okay.
Definitely want parents from underrepresented communities, so that's been a bit of a challenge, trying to get folks there. But I have teachers, I have administrators, and I have some parents in the community. I have a special education representative parent who's been phenomenal, has stayed with me for a couple years now, and I really appreciate her. So again, the more the merrier. It can grow. We definitely love more participation.
Okay.
And then we're looking at our town hall / board meeting. We're looking March 5th, I believe is the date. And to kind of get everybody back together and kind of do what we did last year, where we are looking at our data and saying, what are our highest needs and priorities? What does this team think it is as well? So that's coming, very excited. LCAP, here we come. In addition to LCAP, last year, we haven't talked a lot about differentiated assistance yet this year, and this is what former program improvement was. We are on differentiated assistance because of our homeless population, our results on the dashboard from last year in terms of chronic absenteeism and mathematics. And so last year we did a ton of work. We had a team come together. This team is partnering with SCO. We spend a lot of quality time with our friends up at SCO and really dive into the root problems that we think are the root causes of our problems and what we can do to improve those. We landed on 2 specific areas. Those 2 areas are instructional practices and student relationships. And again, this is not a blame game. We're not saying this is a teacher issue, this is an admin issue, this is district across the district. really looking at all our systems to make sure that we're supporting our students. Unfortunately, our first meeting was canceled because it was during the fires. So tomorrow, we have our first differentiated assistance meeting at SCO. We've been planning that and looking forward to kind of reviewing the data that we have looked at and really seeing what progress we've made. We have very specific metrics that we're looking at in terms of data. And so we're going to start looking at the data and gather it all over again. And then we meet again in March. And I will fill everybody in again in March, kind of what's going on with the team. We will also be spending a bunch of time tomorrow looking at our current LCAP plan and going through all the action steps and seeing how these action steps are truly getting us or not to where we want to be and how we can start changing them. So that's kind of the big fun for tomorrow, and we'll keep everybody posted about the progress that we're making so far and looking at our data.
Are we going to be able to hopefully calendar in one of our extra meetings, an LCAP meeting?
With the
That is
approval of the
nothing
board
but
president and
LCAP.
majority of the board.
Yeah, so we, when we start looking at those things, we bring that up, yes.
Well, the town hall
The-
meeting, what, March 5th?
Oh,
Right, the March 5th, yes. So if March 5th works for
Like we
everybody.
did last year.
Mhm. Remember the meeting last year? So we'll do something
Yeah,
very
there
similar.
was a handful of us.
That's what we're starting
Right.
the publicity now.
Okay.
Get some folks. Bring your friends. Students, you're more than welcome to come too.
I'm going to hit up the
Please.
kids.
Good, that's fine. Again, and I've met with a number of students so far. We started the focus groups. I've met with 4 elementary sites so far. So,
Will there be a daycare?
yes,
Yes.
we'll do something exactly like we
Well,
did
then
last year.
I'll try to get my kids to come
Daycare and food.
with daycare.
Daycare and food.
Okay.
It will be
I
there.
challenge each board member to get on the phone and call and invite 10 people to come.
That's a good point. 20.
Nice, great.
What?
Let's get those
Okay.
posters flowing here.
No. But, so one of the things that, so once this is done, we'll have numbers of achievement,
Mhm.
right? How are we going to set what we want those numbers to be in the future?
Sure. So we looked at that as a team last year, and the group that kind of came together, we called it reach goals, and I forget, it was shooting for the stars or aiming for the moon. We're
Right.
saying shooting for the stars, you can say like No Child Left Behind, we want 100% of our kids at
Right.
grade level. We looked, at our scores and said, or let's do something that's a little bit more achievable. So we've been I'll take math. This is what we picked for math. Math, we've been hovering around 30 to 31% of our kids proficient. Don't want that. And so, but making a jump, we said, let's do, at the end of 2019-20, we want 40% of our kids at proficiency. So that's kind of our goal right now.
Right.
So we're saying that was our SMART goal. So at the
Right.
end of this year, we want 40% of our students, all students district-wide, to be at standard for math. Now, if we don't make that, then we're gonna start looking at why. Again, what, do we need to provide more professional development? That's what we'll be working towards again.
So do we wait a year? Will it be a year before we get those results?
No,
along the way?
no, we should get those relatively quickly within the summer. We have our first anticipatory results in the summer. So while it's, everybody hides the dashboard data because it's still the embargo data, we'll know quickly and we can say, okay, wait a second, what's happening?
Okay, so that's for math. We
Right.
do the similar for language arts?
We
or-
can, we haven't yet.
Right.
Again, and in the LCAP we do, like we've made, each year there's been growth, like we want to meet this growth. So while that hasn't been our differentiated assistance team's focus, it's been math this year, but in the LCAP, we will say, we want this amount of growth at year 2019-20, and these results, and then we'll do the same thing for 2021. We want to see growth. If other districts are growing, we know we can too, and that's where we're figuring out what's happening.
Because I really have no way of knowing how successful our programs are to reach those levels unless we set a number
Mhm.
and then review it at this date, are we there?
Exactly.
And then if we're not there, why not?
Right. And then we've been focusing our professional learning communities, so our teachers meeting in departments and grade levels to really review student data and say, okay, wait a second, so Johnny's not performing to where we need him to be.
Right.
What are we using? And we're not waiting a year for that data, we're doing this monthly.
Right.
So we're looking at lots of progress data to help bring the kids up to standard.
Well, there's two objectives in my mind. One, to provide achievement for students, and the second is be better than other districts so that parents will want to
Right.
bring their kids here and increase our enrollment.
Raise our test scores,
Those are two,
absolutely.
so.
Well, and that information has to be dissected to the board so we can make our financial decisions, because if we're putting money into something that's not working, why are we doing that?
Right,
And
exactly.
so everything we vote on, sometimes I'm like, I don't know.
Mhm.
Why are we buying Rosetta Stone? Does it work?
Mhm.
How many kids is it gonna reach? I mean, it was on the consent agenda, and I had questions about it because it's a lot of money. You know, you
Mhm.
spend 11,000 here, 12, 15. People will say, oh, it's just a couple $1,000s. Well, add up all the difference, and we've just spent $1 million that we don't know if anything's working. So that's my concern. You know, one of the Code to the Future, what's the benefit? We're paying, what, $500,000? Did we get anything out of it? If we've still got crummy test scores, but it's just fun for kids, is that where we want to put that kind of money? And I don't mean to put you on the
No,
spot. It's just-
that's fine.
It's just questions I have.
I can wax poetically about that all evening. So,
Yeah.
yes, no, understand, and these are all good
And
questions.
please understand, I don't want to micromanage what you do, that's
No.
not. I just want to know, are we putting our resources in the best possible place? And I know we talked about that during our goals. So we've just got to find ways to measure the work that's being done. Is the money we're putting at it worth what we're doing? Or do
Right.
we need to totally look at something
Right,
else?
and that's why programs
Are
go
the
away,
systems in
absolutely.
place, and are they getting enough training? And then when there's fire days, we don't have the training, how's that
Sure.
impacting it as
Right.
well?
Yeah, and that's a challenge, yes. When you spend lots of time preparing for a professional development day and it doesn't happen, that's a hit, yes.
I also want to thank you, Julie, because, I mean, among all your duties as assistant superintendent, you've worked so hard on LCAP, and, you know, you're almost like a one-person show in that and so many other things, and I just want you to know that I really appreciate all the hard work and intelligence and creativity you've put in to all this. You've tried new things, you know, and
We try.
you can't be held responsible if parents aren't
Right,
more
but
involved.
we can, and thank you, but I have a great team, that's how we can get all this stuff done, but, absolutely. No, and again, and that's why we change things, that's the purpose of the LCAP. So they want you to look at money, and they want you to look at the programs and the objectives that you have. And if they're not meeting standard, then we're not doing something wrong. So then we go back to the drawing board. We really thought this was gonna work.
Right.
We thought if we focus on instructional practices and we're not providing the PD that we need or something, then we've got to do it. And then let's say this program's going to go away because we need to, you know, put our money here, and that's fine, and that's what we're supposed to do. So that's okay. You can ask, and that's our job. And again, if the data doesn't show it, then that doesn't show it.
Thank you. Any other questions? Okay, that was a discussion item, so we'll go to 10A, acceptance of the audit report for the year ending June 30th, 2019.
Okay, I have Paul Pham here from Chavon and Associates, our auditor, and he is here to present the report to the board and answer any questions that you may have. By the way, the board does have a copy of the audit report in front of you,
Thank you.
and you can follow along. Thank you.
Thank you, Robert. Thank you for inviting me out to share with you the results of the June 30th, 2019 audit. Excuse me. So we came out twice this last year to do a financial audit, and in conjunction with the financial audit, we did do some compliance audits, because the district did spend over $750 in federal awards. So we had a federal compliance audit, and then we do a regular state compliance audit. And while we were out here, we also looked at the bond measure program as well. So since you have a copy of the report, I'm just going to hit on some of the key financial highlights that happened over the year. On the government-wide side, net position was fairly flat. Even though it was fairly flat, a lot did happen. So you'll see you guys issued $28.4 million in debt, which included the premiums. And from that, from the bond program, you guys spent, in terms of capital asset additions, over $62 million. So a lot happened on the government-wide. Overall, you'll see that revenues went up about $7.4 million. Most of that was $4.3 million from property taxes. And on the expenditure side, you did see increases of $8.9 million, and 7.4 of that was just from instruction-related costs. So, and then to the financials that you guys kind of focus on in the funds, you'll see the fund balance overall had a $10 million decrease, and most of that was from the bond program. You guys are spending a lot of your funds and doing a lot of construction, as you guys are well aware of. Okay, so that's the cause of that. Overall, the general fund, fairly steady over the 3 years. You guys have a healthy 3.8% reserve, so that's good. In terms of the results of the audit, we didn't have any exception in our audit opinion, so it was a modified opinion, which means that there was a clean audit, so very good to Robert and his team. And we didn't note any material weaknesses. So that's the end of my presentation, and I'll open up to questions.
What does material weaknesses mean?
So in kind of the normal daily processes, that the district would have controls in place where you would catch errors or whatnot in a timely manner. So if it has a higher chance of not being detected, it would become a material weakness. So we didn't note any such things in terms of your control where that would be a problem. So we did, during the interim time, and as part of our federal compliance requirement, we did look at controls and test those controls.
Basically, controls are who does what and who has access to what, so you wouldn't have a bookkeeper have access, be a signer on your bank account, and the person writing the checks at the same time with no oversight.
Right, yeah.
Those are your
yeah,
controls, and if they found a material weakness, it would be something along, I'm being really general about it, but basically, there are
No, that's
certain
very good,
controls
yeah.
that are put into place so people can't
The
hide
county
things
writes our
or,
checks, so we don't-
I was just using that as an
Yeah,
example
no, that's
to
good.
explain to
That's a good
Tim.
example. I mean, another one could be possibly, if the student body, taking money in for the football game, and they take in $5,000 and no one ever checks their things, and nobody requires them to do a deposit within, the next day or so, and that, something like that.
That's correct, yeah, we did look at the ASB as well, but yeah, so we came in, we identified the district's processes and identified which were the key controls, and we focused on certain transaction classes and sampled from that, statistically, and tested them.
Would that also include, control of assets, and asset management to make sure that do you do an asset inventory?
We don't do the asset inventory, and that's one of the items where Robert and we had discussions on doing that piece with a consultant, so I don't know if that's been brought up, but it was.
Not with the board, no.
Okay,
not
yeah,
yet.
so it's been,
Okay.
yeah, so we've discussed that. We don't do asset inventories as part of the audit. We rely on the districts, and then we audit that based on the additions. So a lot of our bond testing, we substantiated the additions in the current year, the activity that was in the current year.
Right.
So we do have a process to track our assets, things that are coming in, recognizing depreciation as part of the process. But it's a good idea periodically to kind of start from scratch and go back and have them reevaluate everything in all your assets in the district to make sure, things haven't moved, things were not taken off when they should have been, that type of thing.
Or things walk away, too.
That does happen, yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, most of those things that walk away are probably not on your asset listing. Those are, usually when we're looking at capital assets, they're more fixed, your vehicles, your buildings, that kind of stuff. So
Is there
your
a certain
computers and stuff.
threshold in public education? I know in private sector, $2,500 fixed asset versus leasehold improvement or large purchase. Is there a dollar threshold in the public education that's
Yeah.
tracked as an asset?
Yes, the district does have a.
It's 5,000.
Okay.
Yeah. that
So
sounds about
is
right.
it 5,000 per item, or if you had 500 Chromebooks valued at 350,000, those wouldn't be tracked?
No, we tag things and track them, but as far as for fixed assets and what goes on our financials, that's a different threshold.
Okay,
But when items come in, we do tag them for inventory.
okay.
Yeah, and for insurance purposes, you'll know, like, even though they're below your threshold, you'll identify those, so you know what
Okay.
you've got, even though they're not capital assets per se.
Thank you.
Any other questions? If not, may I have a motion to accept the audit report for the year ending June 30th, 2019?
So moved.
Have a second?
All second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries 5-0. So we'll go 10B, resolution. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, drive careful.
Thank you, Robert.
So resolution 20-11 regarding annual accounting of developer fees for the fiscal year ending June 30th, 2019, and the Capital Facilities Fund.
So we are required by government code to provide an annual accounting of our developer fees. That is to include any fees collected, interest earned, any revenues, and expenditures, and exactly what we spent it on, and then identifying the fund balance on that. So in addition to the resolution here, there is Exhibit A, which lists what our residential and commercial fees are. And then in addition to that, accounting of the fund. As you know, we track our developer fee activity in Fund 25, so we're easily able to account for all of the dollars on that. Are there any questions?
I have a question. The expenditures for Rancho Cotati High School at 2.5 million and LJ at 1.5 million, that's in addition to bond funds?
That's correct. So we actually used part of the developer fees to offset some of those costs of the project.
So another 4 million, well, and then some.
Yeah, so if you recall the information that we've seen in the past on our bond does list out separately how much we spent on those projects for developer fees, so we get the true cost of the project.
Okay.
What are the things that developer fees can be used for?
Well, at the heart of it, basically, when you look at construction in your area, the idea is you're going to have growth in the area or additional students as a result of that, eventually over time. And so the idea is that you want to be able to use those dollars to update or increase your facilities or your capacity at your facilities.
So just building.
Yes. There are some other things that we can do out of them, administrative costs. We also have done some of the contracts in other words, for the state bond money. We have a consultant working on that, our application, and that's legitimately can be charged out of developer fees. A demography study could be charged out of there also.
So they can't be used for equipment like Chromebooks or things that go within the buildings, but just for the buildings for administrative costs and.
Construction,
Okay.
basically, yeah.
Okay.
So my understanding, if I'm hearing you correctly, is the developer fees to go to add capacity, because the belief is that you're going to increase enrollment and therefore you're going to need more facilities to house the new students.
Or increase your existing facilities.
So what happens if you, I know I've asked this question a year or so ago, what happens if the numbers don't increase and your enrollment is dropping and you don't need the capacity? How do developer fees continue to come in? We continue to spend it, but we don't see the increased capacity.
So again, you don't necessarily need to be looking and saying you're getting increased enrollment now. You're almost like preparing for the future. Part of the issue that we have is we are getting students from the development. We're just losing them elsewhere. So hopefully somewhere that trend can be reversed. But the way that we're using the developer fee dollars is perfectly legitimate and is a viable source for offsetting the costs of our construction.
Right, okay.
I have one question. So last year, or from 18-19, we charged $10,000 to administrative fees,
Correct,
and then we're doing the same this year?
correct.
A lot less activity this year than last year, so.
Well, it isn't necessarily based on the activity. By law, you can actually charge up to 3% on that. And I think this district has historically charged $10,000 for that.
Okay.
That's for developer fees.
The administrative charge that you
administrative
can
charge.
charge to the fund.
Fine. So in other words, you're taking general fund expenses
Right.
and offsetting them for developer fees. So what you're saying is we could do up to 3% of
Of the total. and-
expenditures?
I believe it's expenditures, but I know it's 3%, since we have a fixed amount, I really didn't go back and
Is
revisit
it
that.
3% of what's received or 3% of what's spent?
That's exactly what I wasn't sure of.
Okay. Can you
But
let
we're
us-
under that threshold.
I know, but I mean,
I believe it's expenditures.
yeah, so I don't know if you want to do that.
Yeah, why wouldn't you want to do that to offset general?
Well, then you use up,
Because you don't want to put regular spending on it.
no, it's one time.
Yeah, and what it is, it's an offset to that, so we're not moving expenditures, we're actually just transferring, we're creating expenditures here and it gets offset in the general fund, so we're capturing the savings there. It is something we can look at in the future, I'm just basically continuing the trend of this district has used those dollars.
And the one that will be decreasing is the bond funds that we were using for administrative. That's going to go down since the projects are winding down. We were taking some money every year to cover, for the director of maintenance salary, a certain percentage of the bond funds to cover salaries.
Correct.
Administrative costs. I'm assuming that's going to go, I think it was like $250,000 or something.
And it has gone down.
Okay,
It has gone down.
okay, thank you.
Okay, so we're on the right page here. So I need a resolution for 10B, resolution for 1920-11. I need a vote for that. All right.
You need a motion?
I need a motion. That's the word I
Did you
want, the
lose your
motion.
place?
I ran out of words.
I move that the board adopt resolution 1920-11.
Now I need a second.
I'll second.
Okay. Roll call. Yes.
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 Okay, we'll go to 10C, Resolution 1920-11, authorizing execution of the amended joint powers agreement and bylaws and adopt separate documents for each program for the Redwood Empire Schools Insurance Group, RESIG.
Okay, so RESIG, as you just mentioned, is our insurance JPA for our workers' comp and property and liability. They basically have gone through and updated their bylaws and separate documents, and as we're a member of that JPA, we're required to present a resolution to the board.
Okay, any questions? If not, may I have a motion?
I move that the board adopt resolution 1920-12.
Have a second?
I'll second.
Roll call? Yes?
Yes.
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 Okay, we'll go to 11A, fiscal update and planning.
Okay, so attached is the enrollment report as of December 31st, 2019, and it's basically 4 students less than November's numbers on that. The next item on there is kind of an update on the governor's January budget proposal. So the governor's January proposal is our look at next fiscal year's budget. The governor presents information on his proposals and his priorities. We were actually expecting better news for us, for our district, and as we knew that the state did have additional revenues that they were projecting above what they had in June. About $3 billion more was available, and we were hoping that the governor would do something similar to what he did for this fiscal year. He was able, this year, he bought down the STRS and PERS rates, which gave us immediate relief to our general fund. And in addition to that, he provided some one-time unrestricted dollars for special ed, which also provided relief for us. Unfortunately, the news that we got was not favorable for us. We'll start off with the COLA. The COLA was at 2.29%. And remember, we're talking 2021 budget here. In our estimates for first interim, we were projecting, based on the information we received, we were looking at 3%, which was used at our first interim, which means that our projected LCF revenues will be down based on a 2.29% COLA. Special education there is going to be additional money coming towards that, but it does through the SELPA.
Oh,
So,
Robert,
yes, sir.
could you translate that percentage into actual dollars?
It isn't as simple as that. You basically have to plug it into the formula based on your projected ADA to figure out what the dollar difference is on that. We can run those numbers, but with the short time that I've had to prepare the information, I don't have that.
So it's about 0.75%.
Less.
Well, it'll be included in the second interim as we develop that.
Correct, thank you.
And it's for next year. But it's for-
Correct.
Yeah, for next year.
Right. And at that,
$100,000, is it $500,000? So,
I'm not going to take a guess.
no, I know, I'm not asking you to, so you can get back to us with that, please.
Yes. With special education, the dollars are going to filter through the SELPA. So it's, we're going to have to depend on the SELPA in order to provide us some sort of estimates on what that would mean for us. They are increasing the base grants, and he is providing also some one-time special ed dollars again. But with these, the dollars we have now, we're unrestricted. The dollars as projected will be to increase or improve services. That becomes a little bit of a challenge because you're asking to improve services, which suggests that you're doing something ongoing, and he's asking us to do that with one-time dollars. So that's a little bit of a challenge on that. School nutrition, there is going to be additional funding for that, for our reimbursement rate from the state, and we'll have to wait and see the numbers on how all that kind of plays out. The other thing that the governor did, about 60% of that $3 billion was going toward new or one-time investments. And he has a series of different programs that he wants to put money towards to create. And while they're noble in cause, a lot of them are towards teacher recruitment and professional development, that type of thing. It doesn't necessarily benefit us like we need. We need ongoing dollars to really help us with that. So bottom line, you know, the news was disappointing for us. January budget marks the beginning of the process, so now it goes back and he starts working with the legislature, and then the next look that we will get will be in May at the May revision. Chances are the dollars, the programs will look much different, and we're hoping between the negotiations with the legislature, there will be some things that will benefit us, such as ongoing dollars, excuse me.
So Robert, the governor made addressing homelessness a top priority in his budget. Is there any way of applying for grants to assist?
Well, the homelessness problem is really outside of Prop 98, outside of education. So the programs that he's looking to do are not related to
Nothing about homeless
educational
students.
budget, right?
Well, the homeless are accounted for in our LCAP. It's one of the special populations that we have to look out for.
But I just don't, you know, I mean, I don't want to belabor the point, but if he's making homelessness a priority and we have a lot of students who are homeless in our districts throughout the state, I don't see why those things don't dovetail, but that's why I'm not the governor.
So that was, if you have any other questions on the January budget proposal?
So the next is the Superintendent's Budget Advisory Committee. Staff took the recommendations the board made at the December meeting and increased the number of parent representatives. We have our first meeting this coming Thursday at 4 o'clock. Lose my head.
That's Thursday.
Pardon me?
That's Thursday.
Thursday.
Tomorrow's the other one.
Facilities is tomorrow.
Facilities
Thanks,
tomorrow.
okay. 3 in a row, yay.
So we contacted the union presidents for them to, excuse me, they recommended individuals from their respective unions to represent them on the committee. And we're still looking for a couple of parents, so we put that information out to principals and asked for their help. And if you have any ideas or suggestions, please pass them along. Otherwise, we have a full committee.
Parcel tax update?
There were no other updates on
No,
the
no other updates?
other standing items there.
Okay. So we will go to meeting dates. We don't have enough meetings. We can have more meetings.
We need a meeting.
So,
I can't keep up.
questions or about the study sessions for the calendar? We asked for it, so. Are we all good with this?
I just want to acknowledge and thank Mindy because she went through hoops to make it so it all worked for everybody. So thank you.
So wait, sorry. sorry.
So wait.
I'm so tired. The grayed out are study sessions and the black are regular board meetings.
No.
Oh,
Oh, did it?
what's green?
It's, could you, it's.
Oh,
printed
never,
it, that's
sorry.
why.
Told you. I'm good. Thank you. Jennifer's like, he's a color printer.
Wait,
so-
wait.
Okay.
So the printed one that's in our package, the green disappeared.
So this is the original. and the
Oh,
second
turn the page, turn the page. There you go. Now I'm on
And
the
you've
right.
got color. Good.
Yeah, I've got colors, and I'm not colorblind.
Oh, so the green is,
The additional days.
thank you. Green is gray in Chris's world.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
All right.
So we've added February 4th, May 5th, August 25th, September
September
22nd, and October 27th.
And this also has the dates for the remaining of the election stuff for the, for,
3 MAP meetings.
yeah, the pre-map meetings are on here too.
I don't think so.
Yeah, because they're the regular meetings, the pre-map
Oh.
meetings are the 18th.
Okay.
No, we have one, we need to add one, is the 27th, right, of February.
27th.
Man, we'll get reminders, right? Because I'm just going to
Hopefully
forget
the day
and
before.
not be somewhere.
Oh, that's right.
It's so much going on. So we added 5 additional study sessions. And we get to decide what those study sessions are going to
Right.
be made of. Cool.
Right.
Okay, thank you.
And we're not having a meeting on Valentine's Day this year, so that's a good thing. Versus last year. Okay, any questions? If not, do we need to do an action. We need to make a motion and accept this. Since Mindy did all this work, don't do it. God forbid if we don't. Have a motion to approve the regular board meeting dates for special study as presented.
I will make a motion to approve
I have
as
a s-
presented.
Have a second?
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you, Mindy. 11C, acceptance of gift donations to the schools on page 83. So we received $2,100 from various donations, and a special thank you to one individual, Rich Henderson, who paid off all the negative meal balances at Monte Vista. I think that's special when people do things like that.
Yeah.
Not the other donations are also nice and thankful, so. May I have a motion to accept the gifts and donations as stated?
So moved.
Have a second?
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Board member reports. You want to go first, Tim?
Okay. I think Zydeco wants to.
Oh, Guzatico wants to give his presentation.
I just want to mention that when we were at our goals meeting, that I mentioned about that we need a teacher recruitment and retention plan, and Mike asked me to send him the resources, which I did, and thank you, Jennifer Sherry, my assistant, for helping me on that research. And so there's a lot of material out there, you know, more than what I sent you, and I know that we've got tons of work, and we don't want to add more work, but the teachers in our district are the backbone of our district. They're the people who make it work for students in the classroom, and everything we do, I feel like, is to support their work. That's the critical work in the school district, and notwithstanding, you know, the great job everyone else is doing. And so other districts and this research show that if you have a strategy, a printed strategy, and you've involved all the stakeholders in the district and getting input on a strategy of teacher recruitment and retention, that you're going to be much more successful as a district, and you're going to be improving student academic achievement because teachers know what works and what doesn't work. And we need to get those good teachers in here. And so I I hope there can be a place, in the cracks of all the work that you're doing, Mike, and
Well, I think that the board's having an ever-increasing list of things you want staff to do. And in terms of numbers of committees and numbers of projects, which is fine, but we may need to come back to you and ask for you to prioritize which things you want first, second, third, because there really is literally only so much time. And so we're happy to be responsive, but we are not going to be able to do all of it
When is our next goals meeting?
whenever you said it.
I mean, that could be something we could add to that.
Right.
February 4th? Is it?
4th of March? February 4th?
February 4th.
February 4th, okay. Okay. Kristen?
I've received several emails, questions regarding recycling at the school sites. I know we didn't have that capability when we first switched over to Recology, but since it's a mandated law. So for some reason, the teachers have blue bins in their classrooms, but they're not being emptied. So I got pictures of these bins, and their students are really into recycling and the environment, and this whole generation is. So I referred them to you, but I also did reach out to you and say, hey, what's going on? Why aren't our maintenance guys emptying these every day? And I don't know, if the custodians,
right.
excuse me, if you had an update on what was going on.
So I just have the report that I got from Josh, and that in many cases, students are emptying them, and it hasn't necessarily been integrated into the custodian's nightly schedule. And so I think that's something that we have to look at and work with Josh and work with custodians on how much they can accomplish in the time that they're there.
Okay. Thank you.
Just one thing I shared with Mike today, that, I appreciate our goals meeting, but the only thing that I like out of goals meeting is, because I'm numbers generated, is where we are today and where we need to be next year in a measurement thing. And we're not there yet. I don't see those numbers, although we talked about those numbers. So the sooner the better, the sooner the better. As soon as we can set some goals, and then that helps me know if we're achieving those goals, setting those numbers. Because my only disappointment about the goals meeting is we'll be completed next year, and the new superintendent, and I think, well, I can't wait till, I guess we can, but I don't want to wait till next year to set a number to try to achieve.
And I think that Julie highlighted that at the LCAP meeting in the town hall, the board will have an opportunity to participate with other stakeholders and look at what we believe those priorities are. And as I heard Julie say, developing SMART goals. She used the example of math and the proficiency levels. So I think that's a measurable goal, that we want kids to reach the 40% level. And so I think those are the kinds of things that I think that's what the board's looking for.
Sure.
Yep.
Yeah. So, super, thanks. That's all I have. Jennifer?
Just participated in a lot of meetings with the rest of the board. Joe and I went to the Wellness Committee, and I've been participating on the Sonoma County Committee that we're doing a lot of changes with district voting throughout Sonoma County, so it's happening everywhere.
So I attended the second half of the Wellness Committee. Not that there was a half, I just showed up late. Had kids, to deal with. One thing I got out of it that was pretty neat is there's the Sodexo has a So Happy app, and I set up my kids on it, and you get to see the menus, and based on your kids' calories, or their age, weight, and height, it kind of says recommended calories, and the food has the calories on there. And then another thing that it shows is the allergens that are in the meals, which is kind of cool. So you can put your, if your kid has allergies, you can put it in there, and it'll pop up red if there's that in the food. I went on a field trip with my daughter, who's in TK, to the Children's Museum, and I thought it was just going to be her class, but it was
2 TK classrooms and 3 kindergarten classrooms. So we kind of took over the place. And 4 children, 1 being my own. And, you know, they're like, all right, when we got on the bus, it was like, everyone stay with your adult. And then when we got there, there's just kids everywhere, running everywhere. And one of the teachers was like, as long as you're 4, get on the bus, that's all we care about. But we did stay together, but it was overwhelming. But it was cool.
So you did 4, and a teacher does how many every day?
Well, they're not all running around Children's Museum, which is like,
They're
there's
trained
indoor,
professionals.
there's outdoor, there's 2 levels inside. It's just pure chaos. And I wanted to take a nap when I was in.
Jennifer, could I ask you what the Wellness Committee does exactly?
So the Wellness Committee, we talk about Sherry King from, Susie King comes in and she talks to us about different things that are happening with the food services. And we also talk about some safety plans, things that are happening throughout the district, whatever Julie has her agenda for that particular time.
So we have a couple compliance issues that we have to address, and one is kind of the nutritional content of our food services. We are to seek input about our menus. We have to follow our wellness plan, which kind of states that you have 4 days, kind of 4 no-tell days throughout the school year to have certain items that are off menu. And that's still a work in progress for us, but we've done our biggest stride to the chagrin of many parents, but I really appreciate folks adhering to this, was kind of really not bringing cupcakes to school that are homemade, kind of really working issues, you know, dealing with issues of obesity, making sure we have healthy snacks. So we've changed things for party days. Instead of bringing cupcakes to the classroom, you can bring pencils or have a 10-minute dance party.
It's no fun.
I know, right? And again, I do use this example. The best example was a parent when this first went through who brought whoopee cushions to the classroom at the elementary level instead of bringing cupcakes. So good one.
Now, let me ask you a quick question. With
Sure.
the new bill that might be coming down the pike, sadly, to put terrible food back in the schools and let people have more autonomy of choices, I guess, does that change what we're going to do as a district, or we will continue to strive for nutrition and good food, whole food?
Right.
As
No,
opposed to the federal government saying, yeah, go ahead and serve junk all day long, we don't care.
Right, well, Robert and I will work on all that, but we are committed to serving good food, healthy food for students. And
Okay.
again, and also we're looking to it, not just food, but also the whole child. We're looking at mental health this year, really making sure that we have resources for students who may be struggling. Again, we've worked with the Safe Routes to School, not Safe School Ambassador, sorry, different one. Safe Routes to School, trying to get kids to get it out, walk, have families encourage students to walk. So each year's kind of been a different focus. This year's going to be mental health, but always is making sure that we are being compliant with our food
So the
services.
Wellness Committee is the whole, okay, thank you.
And Julie, just to build on that, I know that Thomas Page has a garden, right? Does any of that food go into the students'
Not at this point. There's a lot of regulations with the food, and so if we're growing certain food, we have to make sure it's meeting a certain standard. At this point, it's not. It's not saying that it can't happen in the future, but if it does, we have to be very careful about, you know, if we're using certain. And I'm sorry, agriculture is not my area.
There's
I
guidelines around-
apologize, but
There's guidelines around sourcing. So you
Yes.
have to look at the source of where the food items would come from and kind of like the chain of custody, like.
handling. Yes.
Yeah.
And having worked in the food industry and the agriculture industry, all that supplier has to go through rigorous requirements and food requirements and checking and things like that. So if there is a lettuce that's bad, that's got something, you know, you can't take, nothing's being tested out of that garden, so they can't bring that into the school. Even though it might be fresh, but still, you don't know.
No E. coli poisoning, nothing in that
Yeah.
place. So yeah, we'll be very mindful of that. But again, we want to encourage kids to
Right.
use the garden and
Right.
learn all about agriculture.
Okay,
Wait, I had a couple more things.
yeah, go ahead.
We thought you were done, sorry, you said you were tired.
He took his nap.
No, I
He's
said
ready
I
to-
was tired after the field trip. That
I need a
wasn't
nap,
today.
okay.
So at my, both my kids go to Han, And Principal Hankerson rolled out a Stop It app, and I don't know if other schools have done it, but it's just a confidential way for kids to report direct to the principal, and it's already been used. And it could be about anything that they want to report, even if it's about themselves or other people. So I think that's really cool because it's a lot of kids, younger and younger, have phones, and it's easy to report stuff.
My chaperone's not watching me.
Pretty much. Then also, she had a technology meeting, and I wasn't able to meet it, but I've talked to parents, and it was, and she had a letter about it, and I talked to her before she had it at one of the craft nights. But it was just basically about setting up restrictions on kids' devices, and certain apps like TikTok and other apps that we've never heard about, and kind of what's like what kids have actually are doing that we're kind of unaware of. So to me, it's what's up?
Eye-opening.
Well, yeah, it's very scary because exposure, like it's easier and easier to get your kid to be exposed to things that are, that can have long-term effects. Maybe not immediately, but maybe later on, the way they develop socially and mentally, it could really affect them, and you won't see that until they're older and have real adult issues because of it. And I really appreciate that. I only know what she's doing because that's where my kid goes to school, but I appreciate like all the effort that she's putting into teaching the parents. And she's had multiple meetings about this and being very proactive with the app because something happened and she was like right on it with the Stop It app. And she, kind of let us know about it. So I just wanted to say, like, I really appreciate that.
Super. Superintendent's report.
Yes. So first of all, I acknowledge Technology High School for, I've got to get it wrong, 81 out of 500? No. Anyway, they're on the list of the top 500 technology schools, high schools in the country. I knew it was an 8. It's like, but that's powerful. And in talking to Dawn, she doesn't necessarily know how we got on the list, but.
We don't go to 5 leagues. We don't 5
But it's a great honor. We posted on Facebook, and it's probably one of the things we got the most response to of anything we posted. So congratulations to Tech High. At our next board meeting, we are inviting the Rancho Cotati High School football team to be acknowledged, as well as the coaches. And so they'll be coming to that meeting to
Are
be
they doing the
recognized.
flag salute?
If you'd like them to, they certainly
I think
can.
we should have the whole team do the flag salute, not give them all pins.
During the last quarter, we did not receive any Williams complaints, so that is good news. So our District English Language Advisory Committee meets next week, January 29th at 5:30. So you're all, some of you are going to be there because you assigned yourself to that committee. Others are welcome to attend.
It's not a meeting where we can only have 2 trustees?
Yes, I'm sorry, only 2.
Yeah.
What
Yeah.
meeting did you
I
just
know,
DLAC.
what is
Is
it?
that the,
DLAC.
is that the district, is
Oh.
that the DLAC?
DLAC, yeah.
So
Who's on that
Tim and
committee?
I are on that committee.
Not on that one.
So,
Okay.
I'm not either, so that's all right.
all right. Just a reminder that we have showcases going on and that our open enrollment period continues through February, so that continues. At the beginning of the month, I attended the County Commission on School District Reorganization to present an overview of the process that we're going through. The last step in the process for trustee area elections is to have that committee meet in the district and have a public hearing. And that's going to be on March the 23rd, it's a Monday. So that is coming up. We begin CSEA negotiations this week, so that will be rolling. And I want to thank Julie for meeting with our 3 union presidents last week around the waiver we submitted to the State Board of Education about trustee area elections. So that box got checked off, so thank you, Julie. And I think that's it.
Okay, Mike, I've got 2 questions.
Sure.
First, can,
He was trying to adjourn the meeting.
Go ahead.
we're just being facetious, Jeff.
No, he was.
Go ahead.
now, first, is there any way that Dawn, is Cassie still here? If Dawn could talk to Cassie about, the ranking for Tech High, I think that'd be a great way to highlight our district. And then second, I sent you an email about whether or not our English Learners Master Plan is on the district website in Spanish.
It is not, and it's in English right now. And so that will be a goal of ours to get that updated.
Okay, thanks.
Well, with that, we will adjourn the meeting. Thank you, everyone, for staying.